Welcome to Healing the Spirit, a space where we awaken our creativity, deepen our connections, and remember who we are through the lens of astrology, archetypes, and art making. I'm your host, Jonathan Coe. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Healing the Spirit, and welcome to December. I'm really excited to share with you some of the insights that are coming through for the last month of 2025. I don't know about you, but it feels so wild to me that we are literally at the end. It feels like the year just started, and then, you know, here we are. The year kind of stuttered into December. Um, And also at the same time, what is time anyway, right? So I'm holding the paradox of the both end. So as usual, I want to share with you some of the things that I'm seeing in astrology for December. And I also pulled a couple I Ching hexagrams, so we're going to get to that at the end for this episode. So let's begin with talking about the overarching structure of December astrologically. So we are coming into December a little bit exhausted. Mercury has just finally stationed direct at the end of November, and Venus finally gets a break from the land of Scorpio and enters Sagittarius. So there is this sense that we've been spending time in what feels like a little bit of the underworld, right? What feels like a bit of a dark night of the soul. And we are tired. We're coming into December with a sense of, I just want to be held. I just want the river of life to carry me through. And so I can kind of get some reprieve, right? Give me a break is essentially the phrase that comes to mind when I think about our energy on a collective level coming into December. And what is interesting about December is as these personal planets, Mercury, the Sun, Venus, and Mars, um, enters and spends time in Sagittarius, what I perceive is that there is going to be uh, an increase of energy. There's going to be more hope, more optimism, more sense of possibility. And at the same time, we are seeing a lot of T square um, experience, right? T square aspects between Sagittarius, Virgo, and Pisces. And then also, essentially within the first week, we will be experiencing a full moon in Gemini that is creating a grand cross, right? In all the mutable signs. So, what this signifies is that while there's kind of internal energy, while there is excitement, there's enthusiasm, there's this sense of, oh, this is, a new future is possible. We may also feel like there's still a lot of internal resistance and external blockages. And that's kind of the vibe going into the rest of the month, right? That yes, we're coming in hoping to get some reprieve, and in a way we are because there is that surge of energy with all these planets in Sagittarius. It's a really great month for visioning, which is kind of amazing, right? Because we are at the end of 2025. Some of you I know are planners like me, and you might spend a lot of time planning for 2026, and dreaming and visioning and really kind of, looking around to see what's possible, right? Where are the areas of my life where maybe I can shine a little bit more, where I can lift myself up, and also maybe even the communities around me, the people around me, if that's something that really matters to you. There is that kind of internal call from within. But as I'm looking at the transits here, essentially from the middle of December to the end, we are met with one square after another. And squares in astrology represent challenging hard aspects. It represents a kind of delay. Squares ask us to slow down a little bit, right? Squares are basically this tense conversation between two planets that have similar ways of being, right? Because they are in signs that share the same modality, but they are of different elements. So they may have similar orientation, but the way they're doing things, the genre, let's just say, in which they're doing things, are a little bit different. And squares are really potent opportunities for negotiations or renegotiations, right? Squares are not great for having a really clear idea about where we want to go and then pushing to that goal, right? Some level of flexibility, especially because we're talking about mutable signs here, is going to be needed. You're going to have to let yourself dance a little bit, right? And that's actually a practice that I would really recommend for this month. If you find yourself kind of getting rigid, if you find yourself in this moment of like, oh, I really wish something would happen, or I really wish, this and this and that will happen now. If there's kind of that urgency, that sense of, um, there's no time like the now, we got to make this happen, then I really would recommend you to have a couple things in your back pocket that can feel really supportive to assisting you in recovering a sense of flexibility, recovering a sense of, oh yeah, I can dance even though the situations are not what I expected. This is not what I planned for, but okay, let's see where my creativity, where my ability to think, on my feet in the moment, where kind of even my charisma can take me, right? Don't forget that mutable signs are extremely charismatic. Mutable signs are magnetic because there's the sense of they don't take themselves too seriously, right? They are committed to life itself, which is always changing, and yet they're not taking their sense of self or their sense of conceptual identity too rigidly. And this is how mutable signs actually get things done, right? And then towards the end of the month, as the sun enters Capricorn, we will start to see what I perceive to be a cooling off of the energy. The energy is going to start to stabilize a little bit, and we're going to find ourselves swimming in an energetic current where more practical, accurate, and kind of on point solutions are going to be available to us, right? And we might be able, towards the end of the month, to have a better sense of what we want to commit to. So that's just kind of the whole month in a nutshell. And let's talk about some of the transits that I sense to be key for this month. The first one is at the beginning, within the first week of December, we have the full moon in Gemini. This full moon is significant because the sun is in Sagittarius, the moon is in Gemini, and they're going to be squaring the nodes, which are in Virgo and Pisces. So the question that might come up with this full moon is, are you living out your truth? And for some of us, the answer of that might be really obvious. We might have been grappling with some aspects of feeling like we're in situations that are misaligned, or maybe the way we're actually approaching the situation is not quite how we want to show up. But for others, it may be that this is just a question to contemplate, right? This is just a question to kind of stow away in the back of our minds. And as we go through life, notice, oh, I could have said that thing a little bit differently, right? Um, or this is something that actually happens with me in my partnership a lot. where I would ask my partner a question when actually I already know what I want. I already know where I want to take us, right? And so, really noticing these little patterns that we may have cultivated through the entirety of our lives, essentially, where we are not showing up fully as we are in our power, in our full, honest, radiant self, right? Noticing that and not kind of getting dragged into this shame spiral that so many of us can get into, but rather just clocking that, and being like, oh, that's really interesting. Why did I do that? Okay, that pattern is there, right? And if you find yourself kind of in this questioning, especially during this full moon, maybe certain things are revealed to you because full moons tend to illuminate certain patterns. They tend to illuminate kind of where we are in the divinity humanity spectrum currently, where we're operating from, right? And usually the full moon shows us through our actions or through things that come into our reality, the operating frame that we are coming from, right? It shows us what are some of your assumptions when you're moving through life, For example, when I'm thinking about that interaction with my partner where I asked the question instead of just clearly stating what is on my mind, why did I do that, right? Maybe I don't fully believe that my partner will listen to me and receive me in a way that is that feels good to me. Maybe I carry this assumption coming from childhood or maybe coming from, previous interactions that I haven't fully processed and released from my system that I don't think that other people can hear my truth, or that I don't believe that other people can handle me, right? So a question that could also be helpful in this exploration is, are there certain innate gifts that you can express with more sincerity and with more honesty? Is there a way for you to align yourself into a way of being, into a way of relating with others, with yourself, with your creative projects, with your job, in a way that feels more satisfying and more authentic, right? Full moons also illuminate kind of where we don't allow ourselves to be seen in our entire gamut of expression, right? So, as I mentioned, coming into the month, we may feel exhausted, we may feel tired. And so, something that might come up is, am I putting additional burden, additional weight on myself to take on certain tasks and certain responsibilities that I actually have no business trying to take on at this moment? Where are you operating under the assumptions that saying no, being your full spectrum, multidimensional self, is actually not welcome, right? Maybe you have children and maybe you feel like, oh, I have to continue showing up for my child as an A plus plus parent. This full moon is a really good time to take a step back and chill out a little bit, right? There may be situations that are coming up that are forcing our hand into befriending the mystery, into befriending the unknown. And if this is the case, and you've maybe tried a couple things, and it seems like the situation is not moving, notice your attachments to the rigid outcomes, right? To your own rigid ideas of what is the ideal outcome. And then practice letting go and surrendering. And my sense is on the other side, you may find surprising creative solutions. There was this imagery when I felt into this new moon that came up for me, which is a very specific imagery of this musical jewelry box with a ballerina figure in the middle. And this musical jewelry box has been locked for a very long time. And then suddenly it just kind of opens up on its own, and then this beautiful tune starts playing by itself. Like there is a quality to this full moon that asks us not to force our will, not to assert our will unnecessarily into situations that actually require us to just participate as an observer, right? There's a lot to be gained when we trust that we can be in the observer seat and see where life takes us. As we get into the middle of December, around the 11th, by this time, Mercury will be entering Sagittarius, and then Venus, the Sun, and Mars are all already in Sagittarius. So all these planets in Sagittarius is going to be, they're going to be answering to Jupiter in Cancer, right? Which in traditional astrology, Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. Jupiter kind of gets this uh, guest guest teaching spot, let's just say, in Cancer, right? It's welcomed as an honored guest, and so there's this quality to Jupiter in Cancer that is really nourishing, right? Jupiter in Cancer. I natally have Jupiter in Cancer, and I'm also surrounded by people with Jupiter in Cancer. My partner is a Jupiter in Cancer, my mom is a Jupiter in Cancer. And the thing that I've noticed about being a person born under Jupiter in Cancer is we have a lot of love to give, right? Jupiter in Cancer has a lot of love to give. Jupiter in Cancer wants to nourish. Jupiter in Cancer really wants to elevate the way that we nourish one another. There's kind of an art and a, a wisdom tradition to caregiving that Jupiter in Cancer naturally, simply through its presence, knows how to administer. And what I think is always so curious to me and took me a long time to figure out about Jupiter in Cancer is that there is a quality in which being a nourishing, giving person can be very provocative. Being a giving, nourishing person can bring up all these let's just say, hardship or resistance to receiving that other people are harboring, right? And we all have to deal with this on some level. We all have limited capacity when it comes to receiving and giving, right? And so sometimes receiving, being in the receiver seat, can feel very challenging if we're not used to receiving. Being nourished is not the same as being full. Just because you're eating and you're full, that doesn't mean you're actually truly nourished, right? Proper nourishment requires attunement. When we step back and we really think about Jupiter in Cancer, not just as a personality, but Jupiter in Cancer as a larger cosmic force, has this way of attuning to what we actually need, right? As opposed to what we want. And so uh, Jupiter in Cancer to me, which has been Jupiter has been in Cancer, I think since the summer or maybe kind of late spring, um, is pointing to, this year, especially the second half of the year, you might have received something that you didn't expect, something that you didn't think you need, but that actually in the long term will nourish you. But that's not to say that it's not going to be really challenging in the moment, right? That as Jupiter expands you, it may feel not good, right? You may have to expand your capacity to receive love or more abundance or physical, mundane level resourcing, right? Um, an experience I had was somebody who kind of stepped in during a moment of need during this Jupiter and Cancer transit and gave me the kind of help that I was needing exactly in that moment, right? Both on a on an energetic, on a spirit soul level, and also on a practical level. This person showed me a level of generosity that was truly heart opening for me. And in fact, a little bit heartbreaking. And that to me is kind of the vibe for Jupiter in Cancer. All of this is relevant because when we have all these planets, Mercury, the Sun, Mars, Venus, in Sagittarius answering to Jupiter in Cancer, we are going to see this playing out, right? There is kind of a resurgence of this optimistic, hopeful, excited vibe even despite the square to the nodes, right? The square to the nodes, to me, often indicate that there are lessons that need to be learned and integrated that may be showing up as internal or external challenges or difficulties. Between the 11th and the 13th, Mercury makes a trine with Neptune, um, while Mercury was still in Scorpio. And then Mercury enters Sagittarius and then it will sextile Pluto in Aquarius. So during this window where Mercury is finally shifting into Sagittarius, it might be a good idea to be really mindful about all the mercurial things, mindful about what we're thinking about, mindful about how we communicate and express things, mindful about the kinds of agreements we enter. And for those of you who are at this level, I also would recommend you to be really mindful about the information and the perspectives that you take in, as well as the ways with which you orient to the information coming in. Watch the lines between optimism or hopefulness with wistful thinking and straight up fantasy, right? As we are talking about this like Sag Pisces squares, which will color the second half of the month, right? Starting when really on actually it kind of started a little earlier than that. On the 8th, right, Mars in Sagittarius will square Saturn in Pisces, and then starting the 14th, we have Mars, the Sun, Mercury, and Venus in Sagittarius squaring. They're basically all taking turns, right, and making all kinds of configurations with one another. They're going to be squaring Neptune, Saturn, and the North Node in Pisces, which then, of course, because the nodes are involved, will also involve um, Virgo, right, with the South Node being in Virgo. So during that window, between the 14th to around the end of the month, I would say some of the kind of let's say healthy grounded expression of this is going to be um I don't even want to say that. I don't even want to say healthy grounded expression. I'll just say there's potential for both, right? There's potential for both dreaming, right? And seeing the potential and projection. There is potential for really shifting into ways of thinking or philosophizing that is really exciting to us, that helps move us forward, and feeling really overwhelmed by possibilities and by the vastness of it all, right? There's potential for visioning, and there's also potential for really quickly agreeing to something before we get on the same page, right? That, yes, it's really cool to have a cool vision, but here's the thing about, especially for those of you who are interested in collaboration or relationships, right? When we just kind of vibe or surf the wave of visioning, we might find ourselves quickly saying yes to stuff before asking deeper questions. And so it might be good to be mindful, of like, oh, just because it feels like this person and I are kind of seeing eye to eye, are we actually seeing eye to eye, right? And, on the one hand, there's potential for faith, for walking towards the direction that our hearts are leading us into, that our spirit is guiding us towards. without even having a lot of evidence. In fact, if this is kind of the stage that you are currently finding yourself in, I would highly recommend listening to this episode that I recorded recently. It's episode 228 called Why Seeking External Confirmation Keeps You Stuck in a Loop. Blah, 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 blah. I'm trying to talk too fast there. But basically, this episode I think it's kind of a prelude actually to the vibes of December because I was connecting with this idea that when we are bringing in the new, when we are stepping into our true self and we're operating from that space of who we actually are as spirits rather than our conditioned self, our ego, when we shift into our true self, the future is always in many ways unclear. We are always stepping into the void when we let ourselves really operate from that true self, because that true self is this part of us that's infinite, right? This part of us that is galactic. And so when we step into life or when we interact with life from this place, we will never fully know. There is no real guarantee in life, right? There are people and things and institutions that promise us certain things, but we will never fully know. We don't fully know what's going to happen in the next 5 minutes, even. And so there is something that is available with all these planets in Sagittarius that helps us access a kind of faith, that helps us access a kind of willingness to walk the path even when we haven't fully seen, what it will lead us to, right? As I mentioned earlier, a really great energy for planning 2026. It is also a really great energy for connecting with what truly matters to you. If you have ideas that are lighting you up, that feel really exciting in this moment, this is a great time to go for it. This is a great time to build it. This is a great time to get excited about it. I want you to embrace your wild ideas. And with the additional Virgo energy that the South Node has, you can actually figure things out step by step. You don't have to know everything in advance. This might be a really good time to not worry about whether you're moving in the right direction. Mutable energies are so much more about exploration, about throwing spaghetti to a wall, rather than about kind of having this really clear vision of where we're going and then doing it ruthlessly, kind of step by step, right? This is a great time to be bold. This is a time to explore paradoxes. This is a time to let yourself be in that internal space that feels a little less familiar to you, right? A good sign that you're letting this energy really work with you and your conscious mind is you might feel like, oh, I don't even know who this is, like who is making this decision, who is wearing these clothes, right? You might find yourself surprised. This is also a really great time for looking backwards. So, mutable energies are all about transformation. They're about ending the ending of seasons, right? So when we think about Pisces, for example, Pisces ends the winter and brings in spring, right? When we think about Sagittarius, Sagittarius ends fall and brings in winter. And so mutable energies love tying loose ends and find a lot of pleasure and satisfaction in kind of going back to past data and making sense of them. So these are all kind of things that are supported for you to lean into during December. And what I will say as maybe the only thing that is not so great is, when you're kind of moving from this place of urgency, like, oh, I have to get something, I have to really, put blinders on and just get from A to B, you might find that when you approach the kind of three-dimensional reality from that place, you might find that you get thwarted a lot. You just might find that your plans shift or people suddenly cancel on you. And so just be mindful that that's happening. I'm not saying you can't have goals because I certainly even have things in the pipeline that I want to have goals for, right? It's not so much about not having goals, it's about um, not being attached to specific outcomes, right? Um, this is really funny because I was just reading the Heart Sutra translation that Thich Nhat Hanh, I don't know when this was, but this was like a relatively new translation that he kind of brought in and yeah, like created towards the end of his life. And the point that he was making in the commentary was this piece, in the Heart Sutra, uh, it talks about like being and non-being. And it's this idea that when we are so attached to the idea of non-doing, which many of us can get to in the spiritual spaces, we can then kind of get into this rigid space of like, oh, because there are all these squares happening in the astrology, I can't move any projects forward. And I really want to also caution you against that because, in the spirit of mutability, that's kind of against the idea of mutability, right? We think that, oh, then I have to have no plan. But the reality is, if there's a plan that's kind of naturally arising that you want to work towards or you want to move towards, by all means, go for it, right? But in the process of doing that, can you also stay flexible? Can you stay playful? Um, can you, especially when we're thinking about Sagittarius, can you let yourself be convinced without being rigid, right? This is kind of the paradox that I think Sagittarius can teach us. On the 19th, we have the new moon in Sagittarius, and this new moon will square Saturn, Neptune, and it will conjoin Juno. So, the question for this new moon towards the later end of the month is what are you committed to having faith in, right? What are you committed to uh, moving the needle forward, even if you don't fully see what the fruits are going to be just yet? Often, here's the paradox. It's not knowing all the steps that actually will bring us from point A to point B. Often it is our energetic commitment that helps us to continue moving. When we don't know what the fuck we're doing, when we have internal energetic rootedness and commitment, and we continue to be in conversation with the vision, that's when we're not kind of stuck, right? We're not stuck in the kind of this weird, sticky place where we're trying to prove ourselves or we're trying to prove that our ideologies will work out. So here's something that I've been thinking about that I want to share with you because I feel like this will be really relevant for at least some of you. I recently had this experience of I was actually just innocently cleaning my computer. And then I was going through the different kind of external hard drives that I have around the house. And then I stumbled upon recordings of myself back in the days when I was in conservatory playing the piano. And as some of you may know, if you've been listening to this podcast, is if you've been um, on my newsletter, you know that I've been, let's say, rekindling the romance of my relationship with the piano. And I've been practicing the piano. I've been kind of noodling around, composing some little tidbits here and there. Um, and what I discovered was how I was shocked listening to those recordings because I was like, wow, I sounded really good. And, it's funny because in the moment, I remember when I was in conservatory, I always felt like I wasn't enough. And in hindsight, I realized, oh, I was kind of absorbing the projections of my external environment. I was constantly comparing myself to other people that I consider to be better, or maybe that my professor considered to be better. And then also, there have been these moments in my journey where I have this, as someone who is born with Jupiter in Cancer in the 11th house, um, I've had really polarizing experiences with mentors and teachers. And the 11th house to me also speaks to these connections that we can have, right? Like the larger connections that have to do with shared hopes and dreams, which I kind of place mentors in that space as well. And Jupiter also signifies teachers, right? I've been blessed with really incredible, supportive mentors, some of whom have seen my potential before I'm even able to tap into it. And then I've had the kind of and at the other end of the spectrum experience where I've had people who basically, would just kind of in a really mean way, like berate me, to the ground. I still remember there was this um, teacher. I ended up in his studio for whatever reason for one summer in Toronto. He was from Germany and he was so mean to me. He was like, I started playing like 5 bars of a piece, and then he's like, I don't even know like what you're doing here. Why do you sound so weird? Oh, and it was like really extreme. So I've had experiences of like people being really nasty to me, for no reason. Because as I'm listening to these recordings, now that I have so much space from those conservatory days, I listen to them and I'm like, wow, this person plays super well. I was impressed actually. That past version of me sounds very polished, and sounds really like they know exactly what they're doing. And I'm really proud of that version of me. But okay, I got derailed there. This is maybe the most Sagittarian episode that I've ever recorded. um, what I want to say is that experience kind of made me emotional because I realized, oh, this is what I'm committed to now. I'm committed to never again letting other people tell me who I am and who I'm not. I'm committed to never again letting other people tell me what I can and cannot do. These are the things that are actually my responsibility. My responsibility in walking my path as a spirit who also has a body is to not lose faith in my own sense of who I am, where I'm going, because this deep sense of who I am and where I'm going is literally the voice of life, of God, of the universe talking to me, right? So this is work that I literally cannot outsource. So this is something that I want to give to you, especially as you are, if you're listening to this in the beginning of the month, just kind of mark your calendar, as you're approaching the new moon in Sagittarius, right? Ask yourself, are there things in your past, are there experiences you've had that have shown you where you are allowing other people to essentially control who you see yourself as, right? When you look back, were there certain things that you let go of or that you decided not to do, dreams you decided not to pursue simply because some person told you it's not possible, right? This is a really good time to recommit to those dreams if they are still alive. Here's the thing, right? Sometimes people tell us, I remember I played for this woman and then she was like, do you have any other hobbies? And it kind of stunned me because I just finished playing a concerto for her. And then she said, yeah, because your playing doesn't sound very good. You should, I think it would be good if you explore other things that you want to do. I mean, imagine, you just played a concerto. You just played like this like 30, 45 minute piece in front of someone and then they hit you with a brick like that, you know? Honestly, what a bitch. But um, this is turning into quite a Sagittarian episode because now I'm just roasting everybody who roasted me in the past. But okay, I'm gonna bring it back. I'm gonna bring it back. My point here is that it's so easy to receive external criticisms, to receive people saying things that caught you off guard, right? And then to just be like, oh, that must mean I'm not good at it. That must mean I'm not meant to do this. So if you find yourself in these moments, I want you to be really clear about whose opinion is that. Is that that person's judgment or assessment? Or is that something that's truly within you? This can be quite tricky, right, in the moment because oftentimes the these feedback that we receive from people mirrors back to us aspects of ourselves that are trying to discredit our own efforts, trying to invalidate our own knowing, right? There is often like a part of us, and to me, this is part of the conditioned self, right? It's some amalgamation of culture, it's some amalgamation of maybe the household you grew up in, right? Or the things that your parental figures thought were possible or not possible. There are just all these like um it's not that they're completely irrelevant, right? It's not that these ideas are completely irrelevant, but the truth is they're not you. They're not they're not you, right? That's just one person's opinion, really. Some of my favorite musicians. Let's talk about Björk. Let's talk about Thom Yorke, right? These are the people who do not have a conventionally pleasant voice, right? And yet I love them. The reality is that who knows? You know? Who knows what sounds good and what doesn't sound good? If you want to sound good, just keep doing it until you sound good. You know, if you want to build a beautiful, thriving business and you have people around you who keeps telling you that you can't do it, um, my recommendation is for you to stop talking to some of these people for a while, right? There are some people who, due to their lack of imagination, due to their own trauma, and their lack of capacity to vision, will not be able to see you, will not be able to encourage you, right? I once had a mentor who told me something to the effect of, and I never forgot this. She said, um, someone who has gone to the place you want to go to will never try to stop you from going there. They will never try to uh, they will never try to discredit you or your efforts. They will never try to undermine you because they themselves know how challenging it is to get there, right? So this is something to keep in mind. You know, as you bring back perhaps some of these dreams or aspirations that have always been alive for you, that have always felt relevant, are there places where you're not allowing yourself to embrace these dreams because you have gotten into the unconscious habit of believing some other person's negative perception of you, right? Which is really just the truth is we are changing all the time, right? Maybe you didn't sound very good yesterday if you're a musician, and today you wake up and you sound amazing, you know? Maybe the person listening to you was not in the mood to listen to music, so then they only had bad things to say, right? But then other times, maybe if they woke up and then, they had the best breakfast ever. Maybe they'll have a good time listening to you. Who knows, right? Reality is so mutable. Reality is so out of our control. Reality is so shifty. You never fully know why things happen the way they do. And so, if you have some part of you, some connection to a sense of conviction that this is what you're meant to do, go for it. Go for it. And this is a really great new moon to ground yourself into your intention and to ground yourself into your faith in yourself and your intuition. Towards the end of the month, as we move into uh, Capricorn season, when the sun moves into Capricorn on the 21st, this is where we're going to see things cooling down a little bit. Capricorn is about strategy, it's about settling into limitation as a thing that helps us get our creative work done. This is the time to concretize. Um, I'm looking at specifically at the end of the month, on the 29th, Mars in Capricorn will sextile the nodes. And this to me feels like a very different experience than what we've been experiencing throughout the first half of the month, where, with all this mutable energy, it's just like this constant roller coaster. And possibly, a lot of ideas are coming through, but we don't fully know exactly how to direct them forward, right? Um, Mars and Capricorn sextiling the nodes will be really helpful for actually setting things into motion. It's it's going to be about making moves when it feels like the right move and the correct timing. And simultaneously, it also means that if you find yourself being invited to be really quiet when it feels like there's kind of nothing, trusting that as well, right? So Capricorn is not all about just moving forward, right? Capricorn is also about sitting back, right? Seeing how things land. It's about knowing when your action is no longer helping you or others. In other words, it's about patience and restraint. And then we end the month with Mercury and Sagittarius squaring Saturn in Pisces, right? So this is kind of a cliffhanger, let's just say. Um, you may not fully know how to articulate where you're going. It may be more of a felt sense. It may be more of this kind of internal conviction. And if that's the case, just keep going. Okay, I'm going to end this episode by talking about the I Ching hexagrams that I pulled. So the first one is hexagram number 47. The keyword for it is oppression or exhaustion. And the symbol for hexagram 47 is lake over water. And it has this imagery of a lake that drains away into a deep pit. It's about the lake becoming exhausted, right? Um, and it's about this sense of optimism, this sense of confidence drained away into feeling oppressed, right? Feeling kind of mistreated by the external circumstances that we are experiencing. And the I Ching talks about how this is a moment that all of us will eventually experience, right? No matter how much we have stayed in the course of really making sure that we are in alignment and in integrity, we are still going to find ourselves really exhausted. We are still going to find ourselves drained. We are still going to find ourselves in stormy weather, right? And in these moments, we're really being invited to meet the moment in the correct spirit and to give ourselves permission to bend a little bit, right? This is actually reminding me of at the start of this year, I got a reading where this tarot reader and the psychic basically just saw the whole year as like a vacation year for me. And it's funny because in some ways, That's not entirely true. There has been a lot of really dramatic things. But what she said really caught my attention, which is that the moments of momentum this year will be coming from a space of me really connected with a sense of relaxation. So when I'm not pushing, when I'm not trying to get anything done, that's when things start flowing. And I think the 47th hexagram talks about something very similar, right? It's about accepting that maybe progress is not going to happen, right? Noticing where your ambition is a little bit out of control and out of place, right? That places where you're being rigid or being stubborn might actually get you to a place that will feel or will be at the end of the day worse than if you did nothing, right? So, the advice here is when interacting with others, um, be really mindful of your words. Give yourself permission to be quiet when you have nothing to say. Give yourself permission to simply be a listening ear and to not get uh, tempted into responding too quickly in ways that you might regret later, right? And similarly, to apply the same kind of gentleness to yourself, you know? The advice here is not to get impatient, not to mistrust higher powers, and rather to trust that creative solutions will emerge in ways that you can't fully see or understand. And it also reminds us that when you are feeling a sense of despair or depression, even, that's a sign that you might be kind of seeing this through a lens that isn't quite aligned with your true self, right? This is a sign that you might be holding a belief that it isn't correct, right? Or that isn't correct from the universal perspective, right? One of my favorite quotes from A Course in Miracles is nothing real can be threatened and nothing unreal exists, right? And so this is something to remember, that you might want to ask when something is presenting itself to you, is this even real? Or is this just like a confusing mirage? Is this just a confusing haze that is stopping me from really walking my true path? And the final reminder here is to open your mind, quiet your heart, and really hold on to proper principles. To me, when navigating hexagram 47, a practice that could be really helpful is throughout the day, just notice when you're feeling rigid, when you're feeling impatient, and then connect with your breath, connect with your body. Allow yourself to imagine this rigidity melting away, right? Imagine your body regaining its flexibility. And perhaps as it regains flexibility, it wants to sigh, or it wants to let out a big exhale, or it wants to scream, it wants to sing, maybe, or it wants to lie down. Give your body space to have its natural response, and then connect to the heart space, connect with your true self, and see, this can all be done within 15 seconds. It doesn't have to be a whole ritual, right? And yeah, I think this is going to be something that's really supportive as we move through this very mutable times. Finally, hexagram 62 is the second one that we receive. And hexagram 62 is very cool, in my opinion. It's about the power of the small, right? It shares this imagery of like a bird that has to return to the nest, especially during times of the storm, right? Um, and the imagery here is thunder over mountain, right? So it's the symbol for thunder at the top and then the symbol for mountain below. And it's it's talking about how when we have gotten to a point where we have a level of control over ourselves or over our reality, I'm really kind of in my mind recognizing that this feels to me, this hexagram feels to me like it's going to be quite relevant as we move into Capricorn season. So towards the end of the month, right? Because it's this hexagram is all about how when we move, when we make progress, it's hard often to tell if the thing that we've been doing, right, at what point is it going to become excessive, right? And um, one of my favorite translations of the I Ching is by Deng Ming Dao. And in the book, in his translation, he talks about how he gave this example of a teacher who recognizes that a student is really talented and then encourages and propels and pushes the student forward. But there is a point at which the teacher, if they are not really staying in communication with the student's capacity, might lead the student into excess, right? They might be pushing the student too hard and then the student quits or the student kind of rises up against the teacher, right? So this I think is such a beautiful imagery of this hexagram because it's all about recognizing that there's proper timing, right? That especially when we are in moments that feel challenging, when we don't fully see a path forward, we don't see the whole entire journey to completion. We might be tempted to do something that's really big. We might be tempted to move into really grand gestures that then actually sets us back, right? So the 60-second hexagram is a reminder that sometimes the thing that moves the needle the most are the small things. When we fall into the temptation of acting in a really grandiose way that can sometimes only lead to misfortune and the loss of the progress that we have made up till this point. So, what can be challenging is recognizing when we need to stop, right? And I think this is so, again, compatible with Capricorn energy because Capricorn can get so excited about moving forward and about progress to the point of not realizing when there's actually no more progress to be gained, right? And if you find yourself at this point, just remember that usually what brings us into a space of pushing for more is a lack of self acceptance, is a lack of self inquiry, right? It's a lack of awareness. So, in terms of what to do or how to translate this into action, especially for those of us creative mystics, this is important. It's an important reminder that moving forward may require us to be really still. You might want to uh, ask yourself, what do I know to be the right next step, right? And then do that. And then once you finish that, rather than kind of running with your own idea about how things need to be, give yourself some space. Ask yourself, is this still, am I still being asked to move in the same direction? Or am I being asked to pivot here a little bit, right? I was also getting this imagery as I was reading the translation of a splinter. You know how, like, when you got splinters in your finger, they're small, but they're potentially debilitating and they can cause infection, right? And the thing with having splinters is that one, you have to recognize that this is what was happening, right? That um, like maybe a small piece of wood has entered your skin, and then to be really meticulous about finding it and then removing it, right? Once you remove it, the healing can be really swift. But without realizing in the first place that there's a splinter in your finger, you might just be thrashing around and you might be experiencing a kind of um, unnecessary grand activation. So this month overall feels to me like there's a lot of potential for visioning, for unshackling internal ways that we've been talking down to ourselves or not really fully allowing ourselves to see our true selves and their infinite possibilities. And at the same time, also a warning to not move too fast. Okay, I think that is it. I hope that this is helpful for you. I, as always, would highly recommend you return to this sometime during the month, especially as you feel like you need some support or some guidance, giving yourself permission to return to this as kind of a well of nourishment, as reminders of things that you already know deep within, but that can, yeah, really help you reground and recenter, especially in moments of kind of constant turmoil, which this month might bring. Um, by way of announcement, let me see if there's anything I want to share here. I am going to be running a sale of my past courses. Um, there are three courses that I've taught: Eyes on the Edge, Shapeshifting Academy, and Deep Spirit Medicine. Eyes on the Edge is a course about Mars. Shapeshifting Academy is about the mutable signs, which will be very relevant as we are exploring the energies of this month. And then Deep Spirit Medicine is a foundational energetic awareness and cultivation course that teaches very specific tools um, from a very specific framework that I actually inherited from my teacher, Deborah Kremens. So, if any of that sounds exciting to you, I'm going to be running this sale probably between December 8th to December 14th, sometime in that window. I haven't fully decided yet when exactly I'm going to do it, but it kind of feels to me like that second week of December is going to be great. These courses are not usually available unless you are one of my one-on-one client coaching or mentorship. And if you are uh, signed up to my newsletter, I'm also going to be sharing a discount code for you. So if any of these sound interesting to you, I recommend you to hop on the newsletter and yeah, you will be the first to know when these courses become available. Um, yeah, and I kind of want to talk about why I am putting these courses, the replay of these courses for sale. First of all, I am not going to run these courses in 2026. Second of all, I've been going back to them and they are fabulous. If I do say so myself, I've also been receiving feedback from those who are working with me one on one that watching the replay has been so valuable to them. So, um, I figure that this is kind of my gift to the collective. I want to make these available for a short period of time because I do feel like as we are closing 2025 and moving into 2026, there is there's a chapter that's ending that to me this kind of coincides with Saturn being in Pisces, right, since 2023. And actually the first of these courses, Eyes on the Edge, was a 2023 creation for me. It actually started when Mars entered Scorpio in 2023. So it's a really potent, these all three offerings are really, really potent. And I just sense that they're going to be really needed medicine. And I'm going to talk more about them um, as I firm up the details on the sale. But it really feels correct to me to share access to these courses and to have as many of you who want to partake in that work participate, and really let this take hold in your lives. These practices that I'm sharing and these teachings, they are timeless teachings, really. Like they're not tied to a particular time. These episodes that you're listening to, like this one for December, is really kind of, I believe there's wisdom in it whenever you listen to it. And also, we are grounding it in the context of the month, right? But these courses are really material you can come back to over and over again. And I feel that they will be really helpful for a lot of you as you're moving into the energy of 2026. And um, yeah, 2026, I will have many other new courses. Um, Very excited about them. I've been working on them for a very long time now. And yeah, they're finally ready. So they're going to be here. Check out, yeah, just sign up for my newsletter if you want the discount. Otherwise, stay tuned and I will share this with all of you in time. Okay, thank you so much. I hope that this has been grounding for you. I hope this has been helpful. And yeah, I'm just sending you so much love as you're moving through December. And I really look forward to hearing how this lands for you. If any of you want to share on social media or write a comment, I'm really curious how the December 2025 contemplation is feeling for you. All right, so much love, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.